myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say them.
Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Those Were the Days, and it's live, which isn't normally the case, George, is it?
Yeah, it isn't. Good morning, everybody.
Good to see you, George.
A
bit of pressure, a bit of extra pressure this morning, mate.
Well, a little bit, yes.
What season are we looking at today, mate?
65, 66.
Wonderful. And coming off the back of a very successful season.
Extremely successful promotion from the second division into the first division. And typical of Newcastle, though, there's always as much happening off the field as there is on the field, and same goes with promotion season. Set the scene as usual. 65. What was happening in the rest of the world? Well, top 10 music is interesting. Rolling Stones can't get no satisfaction. The Beatles help. Righteous Brothers Unchained Melody. The Beatles Yesterday. Petula Clark Downtown. The Beatles Ticket to Ride. Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. Wooly Bully. The Birds. My Tambourine Man. Nina Rosso. El Silencio. And the Rolling Stones. Get Off of My Cloud. What a top 10. I mean, showing how the power groups, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, were basically taking over music at this particular time in the 60s. And if you're a film goer, picture goer, the top ones were Sound of Music, Dr. Zhivago, Thunderball, and The Magnificent Men and the Flying Machines. Well, I've got to confess, I've seen all of those and enjoyed every one. So that's where we are in time scale. To anybody that was happening to watch the Three Amigos last night, I think this is all coordinated when I start the real thing, because they had a good discussion, in my view, and as did the chat, about St. James's Park, redevelop, new ground, and all of that. And I thought that was a very, very helpful discussion. Well, guess where I'm starting this morning in some ways? St. James's Park, redevelop on new ground. It all happens. It goes in cycles with Newcastle. It doesn't just happen once. We seem to do it 2 or 3 times before we get it right. In terms of starting this morning, guess what's first, Steve? 2 friendlies.
Surprise.
Yeah. 2 friendlies against Middlesbrough. And I think that's more down to the fact that Joe Harvey and Bob Dennison, the Middlesbrough manager, were good mates and wanted to test each other out. So we had an away game to Middlesbrough and lost 2-0. And then a home game to Middlesbrough and won 3-2. So honours even. But the crowd show you what the fans think of these friendlies pre-season, and that is 10,000 at Middlesbrough and 13,000 for us, when the powers that be were expecting crowds of 30, 40, 50,000 because of our promotion to the first division. We're going to the first picture, Steve, which I think is the squad. That's it. That's the 65, 66 squad. And when you look at that team, and you'll see all the way through this morning, as we have in other seasons with Harvey. Harvey's very loyal to the players he picks, and if he can keep the same team, he will. So we're going to see this team on the pitch an awful lot for this season. It's worth saying that this team had 42 games play, and we only used 24 players. Phenomenal. And that's Harvey's management. It was like that last year. And I know he made it plain that he realised that in the first division, it was going to be difficult. he was confident that the defence would come through. His big worry was goals. And to try and offset that, he tried to buy Wyn Davis from Bolton. The two clubs could agree, but Joe couldn't agree terms with Wyn. So that was put on the back burner to be picked up later on. The next one is a picture of the ground.
No, it's this.
Sorry. That's for your benefit, Steve. That's the handbook of the Supporters Club, which there was a lot of people involved in setting all that up, and that was the first official handbook of the Supporters Club. And I thought it was worth reminding people where all that started from, you know.
Brilliant, yeah.
And is the next one the ground? It must be.
Yeah, well, I'll have to go back through your photographs because the next one I've got is a Middlesbrough programme, then this.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, the Middlesbrough programme is one of the friendlies, so we've talked about that. That's Ron McGarry against Nottingham Forest, who were first game, and I couldn't find the programme for that, so I just put this action picture in. Typical Ron McGarry study. You know, he was a hard character, hard worker. The good bit about Ron McGarry is that he could play right across the line. He didn't matter where he played as long as he was in the team. With his business cards, have goals, will travel. And that's one of the friendly matches. I mean, I still, yes, it got the team warmed up, I suppose you could say, but I still puzzle as to why season after season we had these friendlies that didn't seem to mean very much, to be perfectly honest, but never mind. Such was life. The next one should be, we should be going to West Brom, I think. Yeah, West Brom at home is the next one, and we see the front of the programme is basically at the picture of the stadium, and at that time we were in an amazing public row with the city council. The season before, our promotion season, the FA and FIFA made it plain that when the World Cup came, some of the games would be played in areas, and one of the areas was going to be the Northeast. And teams that bidded for it and were successful would get a share of the profits to help to pay for the development of their ground. And of course, Newcastle were interested. And in the promotion season, they submitted outline planning for the redevelopment of St James's Park in the hope that they would get some of the games at St James's. Well, lo and behold, the council turned the plans down. And you can imagine the furore that caused. But it also caused a row between the council and the club. And then the council made it worse by suggesting that they take over the ground and turn it into a multi-sport stadium to get the World Cup money, and that two councillors would go on the board of Newcastle United as part of the deal. Well, needless to say, with Seymour, McKeague, Herford, etc. around, the answer was a resounding no. And of course, that just escalated the row between the club and the council. And the net result was the row went on to the point where we lost the World Cup games. They went to Middlesbrough instead. So Sunderland and Middlesbrough got the cream. We got absolutely nothing. And I think that picture shows how, in some ways, how desolate the Gallowgate in the Leazes Terrace is. Ripe for development. People would say, well, we missed that chance of development, that's for sure. And the row went on to become very public as well. There were even TV debates between the leader of the council and Alderman McKeague. Although McKeague was great at that sort of thing, and the club looked as though it knew what it was talking about, it didn't do football or the city any good. It was a disaster. But the disaster was we didn't get the World Cup. We played West Brom at home. We lost 1-0. West Brom was scored by Kay, one of the old timers. But in that team at that time was a new centre forward, a young centre forward who was getting quite a great reputation, Jeff Astle, who was phenomenal in the air and of course is now the subject of all of this. Was one of the starts of all this research into heading the ball and Alzheimer's and dementia. But just Jeff Astle was in the team that day, and he headed on to one of their from a corner to one of their fullbacks, a lad called Kay, and he slotted the winner in, and we lost that first match. The first game with Nottingham Forest, by the way, we drew 2-2. We then went off to Sheffield Wednesday. I think there's a programme for Sheffield Wednesday next.
If it's an away game, it's not, mate. No. It's a home game next, Manchester United.
Oh, that's right, out of kilter then. Doesn't matter. We'll catch up with it. Yeah, I'm not sure how that's happened, but never mind. West Brom, we went to we went away to Sheffield Wednesday, and we lost to Sheffield Wednesday to a £23,000 23,000 in the crowd. And the team, our team from start was Marshall, Craig, Clark, Anderson, McGrath, Eiley, Hockey, Hilly, Cummins, Penman, and Suddick, and stayed like that for the West Brom game. This Sheffield Wednesday game, it stayed the same, except that Ron McGarry substituted Penman when Penman got injured. The Sheffield Wednesday team had Ron Springett in goal, who was the England goalkeeper at the time, and one or two characters, a centre forward called John Hickton, who used to cause all sorts of problems. He was a roughhouse centre forward. And in the midfield, they had a very clever and intelligent midfield man called Peter Eustace, who also played for England. But Peter Eustace later on became quite famous for getting involved in with some of the Everton players in a match fixing saga, and allegedly was one of the perpetrators. So much so that he and all the Everton people involved got banned from football. But Peter Eustace was a very clever footballer. So we went to Sheffield and we lost 1-0. We now away at West Brom. We return game with West Brom, and it's the same two teams as played at St James's Park. Is there a programme for West Brom, Steve? No.
Manchester United at home is the next one. I've just been on your Twitter account where you send us the photographs, and they're all correct and in order, mate. So Manchester United at home is the next programme you send us.
Right, okay. Well, we're not far away from that anyway. West Brom away, and lo and behold, we win 2-1, which is a huge sigh of relief for supporters, because we're already bumping around the wrong end of the league. We're bumping along the bottom end of the league instead of trying to be somewhere else. But our team, typical Harvey, Marshall, Craig, Clark, Anderson, McGrath, Eiley, Hockey, Hilly, McGarry, Penman, and Suddick. And the only difference as we go along is that occasionally Ron McGarry gets a game because Penman's injured. And the West Brom team was exactly the same, and included Jeff Astle, but we beat them 2-1. And Dave Hilly and Ron McGarry scored the two goals. Theirs was scored by Kay again, the same bloke from a goal from a corner, which suggested we were a bit weak at set pieces, but never mind. We won the game 2-1, and as I say, a great sigh of relief around Newcastle then, because we were bumping around at the wrong end of the league. And the next game is a home game to Northampton, and everybody's thinking, well, they came up with us and they were second, but they were only a couple of points behind us. They were a decent team. So we played at home to Northampton, and we got another win, another 2-0 win, with Suddick and Cummins scoring the goals. In the Northampton team, their goalkeeper was Brian Harvey, who they'd bought from us a couple of years beforehand, and somebody I knew personally from when I played. a decent shot stopper, Brian, but his nemesis was high balls. He could do nothing with high balls other than drop them, I'm afraid. And in fact, I think one of the goals that we got, the one from Bobby Cummins at 61 minutes, was a direct result of Brian Harvey dropping a cross ball and Bobby Cummins just sticking his toe on the end of it. Anyway, Brian Harvey was playing, and then in their midfield, or the defensive midfield, was a young man called Graham Carr, who eventually became our chief scout and brought all the French players from into Newcastle much later on when he was our scout, and of course the father of the comedian Alan Carr. And further down the line in Northampton's team was a lad called Tommy Robson, who was from Gateshead, and eventually Tommy came to play for us. But at this time he was with Northampton. So we've got another 2 points, and we're starting to climb up the league. And as I say, a collective sigh of relief from fans knowing that how things were going. We're next at home to Manchester United, which might be the programme that you've got now.
I was going to wind you up and say I haven't got that programme, but there
right,
it is.
Okay. I clearly haven't numbered them right, but never mind. That doesn't matter. That's it. That's the programme that matters. And we knew it was going to be a tough game. They were playing very well and were amongst the teams that were being talked about as winning the championship. And sure enough, it was a very tough game. In fact, I remember being at this one, and Manchester United, yes, they gave us a hard time, but our defence, as Harvey had thought, matched them very well and kept them well out of our penalty area. But unfortunately, when you've got the likes of Dennis Law, Bobby Charlton, and George Best in your forward line, you're not going to keep them in bay forever. And of course, we didn't. We succumbed with 2 goals. 2 goals from Hurd and Law, and Trevor Hockey scored a consolation for us in the very last minute. But a huge crowd as always, 58,000 for Manchester United, which is not unusual. They were always very popular, and as I say, a tough game for the lads, but they stuck at it, and again, the only change to the team was that Ron McGarry came on as a substitute for Willie Penman, and put himself about in his usual fashion, but didn't manage to save us in any way. So we lost 2-1 to that, which was a huge disappointment. We then went to Stoke City. I think there might be a Stoke City programme. Yeah, we went off to Stoke City in a away game, and Stoke weren't doing very much better than us. So we thought, well, maybe we'll at least get a point out of this game. Well, no such luck. Stoke took one of the cleaners, beat with 4-0. Really did give the run around, and their team was it was the old stars in that team that give us the problems, like Jimmy McElroy, who played for years for Burnley, and Maurice Setters that they got from West Brom, and Dennis Violet and Veron that they got from Manchester United. They were just all over us, I'm afraid, and they beat us 4-0. 25,000 crowded Stoke, which in those days wasn't a bad one. The next one is the away game to Manchester United. I think the Manchester programme's there. Yep. And everybody's thinking, oh gosh, we lost very badly at home. They give us a hard time. We're not going to get much out of this game. But lo and behold, typical Newcastle rolled up their sleeves and give it their all, and they drew 1-1 with actually it's a game that they should have won. It was 1-0 from a Ron McGarry goal after 42 minutes, a penalty, and then we got right to the 85th minute before Dennis Law forced a goal in off Ollie Burton. So it went in as an own goal off Ollie Burton. And we got a 1-1 draw, which everybody thought was more than creditable, considering we were expecting to get a real 1,000 at Old Trafford. 32,000 at the game, which is not bad. And then, as I say, the team was as it has been all season. The only difference was at centre forward, instead of McGarry, we bought Bennett from Rotherham, and he went straight into the team and played for the next few games. Slight changes for our own team. Ollie Burton slotted in at right back. Very versatile player, Ollie Burton. He went right across the back four and even had a couple of games at centre forward later on in the season. Because David Craig had a slight injury. But otherwise, it was the same team. Harvey had bought Tommy Knox from Chelsea, and Tommy Knox went on the left wing. So that was our turnout at Manchester. But it seemed to do the trick. We got a 1-1 draw, and everybody was happy. The next game is a home game to Burnley. I haven't got a programme, but I think I've put a picture of the Burnley team in, Steve. Yep, that's them. That squad of Burnley's is so much northeast. I mean, I think there's 17 players on there, and I've gone through them with my memory and what I've got written down. And there are 12 out of the 17 who either come from the Newcastle area, Durham area, or Northumberland area. And incredible the amount of talent they used to take away to Turf Moor. And the team that played us, for example, was Thompson, who was from up here, John Angus was, Jim Talbot was, Brian Miller was from Durham, Andy Irvin, Lockhead, and Bellamy were all either Northumberland or Durham lads. So quite a local input. However, in terms of the game, we managed to get well into the game. We opened the score, and Albert Bennett scored the first goal in 8 minutes, and then they equalised on 14. And then after the second half, Anderson and Haley scored again and made it 3-1. And just before the end, Lockhead, who'd scored the first goal, scored their second goal to make it 3-2. Everybody was happy. We were lifting off the bottom of the league, just mind. We were still at the wrong end, but people were at least hoping that we weren't going to get into a relegation battle. Does that sound familiar? Not get into a relegation battle. Anyway, it was a win that did a lot of good. And so we went to the next game, which was a League Cup second round game. And this has not been a good tournament for us, the League Cup. We haven't, since it was started, we've never had a good run in the League Cup, and things haven't altered since hardly. So, but we thought, well, Peterborough, fourth division, come on, this has got to be a good start. So we entertained Peterborough with a 17,000 crowd. So it gives you an idea what the fans think of the League Cup at that time, or at least our performances in the League Cup. And I think there's a programme for the match on there somewhere, Steve. Yep, that's it. And lo and behold, everybody thinks, well, come on, let's have a run. That's a good start, a fourth division team. Well, good start or not, we lost 4-3 against Peterborough. And it's the first game I can remember being at where the crowd in unison slow hand clapped. I've never heard that at a football match. I've heard it at all sorts of events, but never at a football match. But when the Peterborough's fourth winning goal went in, the crowd in unison started a slow hand clap. and that jeered them off the pitch. It really was. It was awful to be at, and I have to say they deserve nothing less, because although it was 4-3, we never looked like winning it. Peterborough just kept at it and kept us pegged down. So our goals were Bennett, Eiley and Hilly, and theirs were Beasley, Comey and Watson. Interesting team. In their midfield, they had Brian Wright, who they bought from us a couple of years beforehand. And in centre forward, had a lad called Johnny Byrne, who they bought from West Ham, who was quite a decent footballer. But it was depressing, to say the least. So out of the League Cup we go with a bump. And we're off to Chelsea next, I think, is our next away. That's it. And having had the disaster of the League Cup and other bad results, we thought, well, London's not a very happy place for us. This is going to be a difficult game. Well, it was a difficult game, but again, typical Newcastle. They rolled up their sleeves, and we got a 1-1 draw at Chelsea. And indeed, we scored first. Albert Bennett scored the first goal in about 20 minutes, and it took Chelsea till nearly half time to get the equaliser. The Chelsea team was lots of very well. There's the two teams as it happens, and you can see the Chelsea team with Osgood, George Graham, Terry Venables. I mean, Graham and Venables became famous managers, of course. Everybody was those. And Hollins in the midfield in defence, whose son's very much involved in TV at the moment, and McCready, Scottish left back, who also became quite a famous player, more famous with Manchester City rather than he did with Chelsea in some ways. But we got a 1-1 there. Nobody had anticipated that we would, and 31,000 at the game, and we at home everybody was thinking, well, we expected to get turned over there. That was a nice surprise. So we came home with a 1-1 draw, and came home to face Arsenal at home. The Arsenal team was full of big names: Frank McClintock, George Armstrong, who was a Geordie from up here, from Hebburn, Joe Baker, the Boston England centre forward, and on the left wing, of course, George Eastham, who bought from us a couple of years beforehand. And I noticed on the chat last night on Three Amigos, people were, was it on Twitter? On Twitter, somebody mentioned that yesterday was the anniversary of him going on strike to get his move from Newcastle, and how that started the players getting wage caps taken off and all the rest of it. Well, it was, but in my opinion, it was always also the start of agents, because at that time I was still there, and wherever George Eastham went, there was two people with him: his lawyer and another bloke in a nice flash overcoat. Nobody knew what he was, but I reckon he was George Eastham's agent and first of many. Anyway, George Eastham played and came back to haunt, of course, as they usually did. We lost the home game 1-0. Frank McClintock scored the only goal. He wasn't a big goal scorer, but he got this just before half time. 43,000 at the game. Our team, easy to pick, because we had the same team as all, except that Marshall got picked up with injury. Dave Hollins was in goal. David Craig was back at right back. Frank Clark had an injury, so Ollie Burton slotted in at left back. But otherwise, it was the usual. And Anderson, McGrath, Eiley, etc., right down to Tommy Knox on the left wing. But a 1-0 defeat was a bit disappointing. But on the other hand, people thought, well, that's Arsenal, so it may be, maybe not such a bad defeat, but because they too were also being talked about as possible league champions. The next game was a home game against Aston Villa, and we'd always had good, decent games against Aston Villa. 31,300 at the game, and we beat Aston Villa 1-0. Ron McGarry scored the vital goal just after half time, and the team was our team was as before, but Marshall was back in goal. Dave Hollands was put back onto into the subs bench. Interestingly, Harvey was very sparing in using subs. He didn't use them all the time. It had to be a necessity. People really did have to be injured to get on the pitch with Joe Harvey. Anyway, Marshall came back into goal, so we had the same lineup for ourselves. The Villa team had some interesting players in it. McLeod, who was the Scottish winger and eventually became Scotland's manager much later on in the World Cup. And Dave Aitken was a really hard fullback who caused all sorts of mayhem. And they had a Dutch fullback called Sluwenhoek, who was a very, very tidy player and gave good service to Villa. And as I say, was a very, very tidy player. So we're now on the up. We've got a victory against Aston Villa, and everybody's heaving a sigh of relief. And the next program, I think, is Hearts. That's it. Now, guess what? In the middle of a vital First Division campaign where you don't want to be relegated, you just slot in another friendly, don't you? I mean, a challenge match, Hearts called it. Well, challenge match or not, we went to Edinburgh and lost 2-1. Bob Moncur scored our goal, but Hamilton scored there too in the first half. So we and the crowd, 5,000. Beggars belief that you would interrupt your league program to go to Edinburgh for a 5,000 crowd. I'm sure there's more behind it than we would know, but it just seemed to me that these things were more of a nuisance than an advantage. So the next game was Liverpool away, and having had the results we'd had recently, Liverpool were flying high and very near the top, and we were very near the bottom. So there was a lot of anxious fans on Tyneside wondering what would happen in this match. And we went to Anfield and lost 2-0. Hunt and Callaghan scored the goals, 48,000 in Anfield for that match. I think the next picture is of Anfield actually and the Liverpool team. Yeah, I mean, the thing that I like about that one is contrast that Anfield with the Anfield that we see today. I mean, just unbelievably different and of course much better because it's all seating, etc., etc. Although nobody sits down as far as I can see, but never mind, all seating. And some real characters there. Right in the middle of the back row is Ron Yates, the tallest player there, centre half, who was a Scotsman, an incredible centre half, and really a tower of strength for Liverpool for years. Bill Shankly relied on Ron Yates a lot. And in the front row, second from the left as we look at it, is Roger Hunt, who went to the World Cup with England. Next to him is Ian St. John, sitting in the middle, leaning slightly forward. Real character, as everybody knows. And then the Anfield Iron, Tommy Smith, whose tackling got him a reputation across the whole world, never mind the whole country. And then next to him was Peter Thompson, a fantastic left winger for Liverpool and for England, and somebody who I had the pleasure of playing against several times as a schoolboy. So we went to Liverpool and unfortunately lost 2-0 with Hunt and Callaghan scoring the goals, and it was to say it wasn't expected as would be telling fibs. Nobody on Tyneside thought we were going to get anything out of the match, so they weren't disappointed. But what the word back on Tyneside was worried that we were slipping down the league again, was going in the wrong direction. So the next game was a home game to Spurs. No, there's no picture for that one. No, a home game to Spurs, and we're desperate to get something out of our home games, at least to try and keep with the right side of the league, because we are still again sliding down towards the wrong end. And lo and behold, they rolled up their sleeves and give it their all, and got a 0-0 draw. Very hard fought draw against Spurs. 43,000 at the game, and it was a 0-0 draw that wasn't dull. Is my memory was that it was one of those 0-0 draws which could have been 3-3, 4-4 if the ball had got in the net at the right time. But it stayed out. It hit the woodwork. It hit the bar, and so on, and it ended up as 0-0. The important thing for Newcastle fans was it was a point to get with moving up the table, up to the middle of the table instead of bumping around the bottom end. The next game is a away game to Fulham, and I think there's a programme for Fulham, Steve. Yep. Now that's a different Fulham programme. Previous seasons, I think I've been rather critical of how amateurish the programme was. Well, that's quite posh now. They've obviously taken a hint, and we go to Fulham hoping that we get something, but nah, London isn't very kind to us, and certainly that wasn't on that day. And Fulham beat us 2-0 with Key and Graham Leggett scoring the goals. And then the Fulham team, of course, are people who we knew. George Cohn, who's World Cup player. Graham Leggett, Scottish international. And Johnny Haynes, of course, their homebred star who played for England for a lot of years. And then also in the midfield was a gentleman called Bobby Robson, who we came to know and love very well on Tyneside. Our team was, as expected, Marshall, McGrath went in, Burton went in for Craig, Clark, Thompson went in for Anderson because Anderson had a knock. McGrath, Eiley, Robson, Kit Napier, who Joe Harvey had brought from Workington, Ron McGarry, Dave Hilly, and Alan Suddick. And as I say, 2-0 defeat, very disappointing to go to Fulham and lose 2-0, but in some ways, because it's in London, not entirely a surprise. So we come home from that with the team slipping towards the bottom end still, and we come home to a home game against Blackpool, and Blackpool weren't much better than us. They were bumping around the bottom end as well, and everybody thought, well, this is an opportunity to get something back and change things. And lo and behold, they did what was expected, and they beat Blackpool 2-0, which was fantastic as far as our fans were concerned. 34,000 at the game, and Pop Robson scored both the goals, one just before half time and one just before the final whistle. So 2-0 against Blackpool, and we felt as though we were flying high because we leapt about 4 places in the league on the back of that win. The Blackpool team had some characters in. Tommy Thompson at fullback, who used to play for us. Jimmy Armfield, who became very famous with Blackpool in England. Alan Ball, who's played in the World Cup, became very famous. And Dave Charnley, who never got into the England team, but a lot of people think he should have done because he was a good centre forward. So we beat a good Blackpool team, actually. Again, give us a couple of skips up the league, which is what we were looking for. So now we go away to Blackburn, and everybody thinks, and I think there might be a program there for Blackburn. Yep. And everybody thinks, well, they're not much better than us. Surely we'll get something. Well, we shouldn't build our hopes up with Newcastle because we got beat 4-2. And it was 4-2, but it was a bad defeat. It is what I read. Yes, we got 2 goals. One was an own goal by one of theirs, and Albert Bennett scored the other one. But by half time, we were 2-0 down, and after second half, in the space of 15 minutes, we were 4-1, then 4-2 down. Only 12,500 at Blackburn, which for them was sort of average gate they were getting, which makes you wonder how they survived, because that was the only income that they had was money from the gate. But it was not a good day for us. Blackburn had a decent team, 1 or 2 characters. Ronnie Clayton in their midfield, and their captain, who was playing for England. And that's the team, and that's Ronnie Clayton right in the middle with the ball at Ewood Park. And they were a tidy football team, but we shouldn't have been losing 4-2 to a team like that. We should have at least been getting a draw, was how most people felt. But never mind, we got beat 4-2 and had to make the best of it. So the next game is a home game against Leicester, and again they're about where we are in the league, and we're thinking, well, surely we're going to get something out of this one. 27,600 turn up for the match, and lo and behold, Pop Robson puts one in the lead on 21 minutes. Then after that, absolute disaster. We lose 5-1 at home. With Goodfellow, Sinclair, Dugan and Stringfellow scoring for Leicester. Now, Leicester were one of those teams that were either up here or down there when they were playing, because they had lots of characters in the team. Gordon Banks was the goalkeeper. He doesn't need any introduction. But they had, in midfield, they had a lad called Cross, who was a clever player. And then in the forward line, Jackie Sinclair, who eventually came to us and was in our first cup winning side. A lad called Stringfellow, who had a fantastic reputation as a dribbler. And then Derek Dugan was the centre forward, big Irish centre forward, who again used to cause mayhem in the air because he was a big bloke, and he used his weight and his height. So Leicester really did give us a drubbing, and I think I remember going home from that game thinking, well, we really are in a relegation battle now. After that's pretty desperate stuff, and I don't think I was alone in thinking that. So anyway, we get beat off Leicester, and lo and behold, guess what? Another friendly. We play Moscow Dynamo in a friendly, and I think there's a program there for it, Steve. Yeah, I don't know when they arranged that, but the timing couldn't have been worse. We just had a thrashing off Leicester, and we play Moscow Dynamo, who are at that peak of their European successes. And of course, they come and they beat were 4-1 and just rub it in that we'd just been beaten 5-1 by Leicester. Bob Monco scored our goal in 27 minutes, but they scored 4 goals and 3 goals in the first half and a 1 just before the end to rub it in. However, the supporters are taking these, I think, beginning to fasten onto these friendlies, because I'm wondering what they're about, because only 11,000 at St James's Park for Moscow Dynamo, which is incredible. It should have been. They were nearly. I think they were European champions at that time. You'd have thought that people would have turned out, but I think after the 5-1 defeat of Leicester, it was always going to be a bit of a wishful thinking to get the ground full for another game so quickly. So Moscow Dynamo thrashed us well and truly 4-1. So off we go to an away game to Sheffield United. And I think there's a programme of Sheffield United. Yep, that's them. And we hope and above hope to get something out of it. But we didn't. It was a 3-2 defeat. Our team was predictable, except that Ollie Burton went in at right back because David Craig had an injury, and Ron McGarry slotted in at on the left side with Dave Hilly because Andy Penman had an injury. So it was Marshall, Burton, Clark, Anderson, McGrath, Ailey, Hockey, Suddick, Bennett, McGarry and Hilly, because Albert Bennett was centre forward at that time permanently. So we went to Sheffield and lost 3-2, sadly. The interesting thing is that by half time we were 2-0 up. Goals from a corner, Billy Thompson slotted in for us as he'd gone on as substitute for John McGrath, who'd been injured at centre half, and Jim Ailey scored the other. So 2-0 at half time. Everybody thought, "Whoa, this is good. This is just what we need." A 2-0 victory, and so we hoped. Well, we shouldn't hope, because after second half started, a little man called Keith Kettleborough in their midfield tore us to pieces, and they beat us 4-2. It was just Woodward, Jones, Wagstaff, two. They well and truly tore us apart in the second half, and others in Kettleborough was a name to remember. Keith Kettleborough, but in their team they had Hodgkinson, who was an England goalkeeper, and two Wagstaff brothers who didn't play for the full England team but played for the under-23s, and a guy called Shaw, who was a long-standing Sheffield United player, real old stager. So we lose at Sheffield, and things are now getting very, very sweaty palmed on Tyneside, because we're not just rubbing along the bottom, we're actually in the bottom two at this stage. And then to add grist to the mill, as I say, things happen off the field for Newcastle United as much as they do on the field. And just at this time, the FA get letters from 3 clubs complaining about the rough tactics of Newcastle United. And they get a letter from the chairman of Burnley, Bob Lord, and his comments are, this team should be played in a menagerie, not in a football field. And the next time we go to St. James's Park, we're going to put a horde of elephants in the defence rather than players. They're a disgrace. This is Bob Lord's letter. And then within the same week, Tommy Docherty, the manager of Chelsea now, Tommy Docherty, when he played, was an over-the-top guy. He was a hard man and kicked anything that moved. And here he is complaining. I've seen nothing worse than the Newcastle United's methods. This sort of destructive football will drive the crowds away. That's what Tommy Docherty says. So Joe Harvey, in his usual diplomatic way, says, it's nonsense to say that Newcastle are rough. We're taking the hammerings, but we're not crying. So, and then to add to it, Mr. McKeague, our outspoken director and lawyer and very articulate man, he writes a letter to the Times, and it said, he, meaning Bob Lord, appears to have become obsessed with the carnivoria, and that's a bad thing for an affluent butcher to be, because that's what Bob Lord was. He made pies and sausage. Moreover, I might suggest that my old friend, that it's not a bad thing to cogitate a moment before baying like a wounded wolfhound. So as I say, all of that's happening off the pitch and in public while the team's trying to survive their status in the first division. So next game is the away game to West Ham United. And I think there might be a programme there, Steve. Yep. And it's London. It's after a couple of bad defeats, and people are hoping something will happen. Well, nothing. Something did happen. That the lads give it a real go, but we lost 4-3. Sad thing is, until 68 minutes, we were 2-2. But then a young man called Jeff Hurst came on the scene and scored a hat-trick. Bang, bang, bang. And Bradbrook scored a fourth. So we lost the game 4-3 with 23,700 at the match. To say by now that the sweaty palms on Tyneside was the order of the day is putting it mildly. People were definitely looking over their shoulder towards the second division again. The West Ham team, some great stars in it. Bobby Moore, Martin Peters, Jeff Hurst, and a lad called Sissons who played on their wing. He was a very clever player. Our team was, as it had been before, with Marshall, Burton, etc., except that at centre forward, McGarry had sustained an injury, and Joe Harvey, in his inimitable style, threw on Bobby Thompson, a reserve centre half, to be centre forward. We didn't win it. We lost 4-3, but he must have done something, because people did score goals, and I suspect knowing Billy Thompson, he would certainly shake things up. So we come home now to a game against Liverpool, and to say that nerves in the Gallagher corner were on edge because Liverpool were playing well, and as I said earlier, looked like they're running towards the title. We come home to Liverpool, but we shouldn't. As I say, you never get surprised too much with Newcastle. There's always something happening. Then we drew 0-0. We pushed Liverpool all the way, and with the team that they had, with 35,000 in the ground, and it was their full team. You know, anybody that's interested in the names, Lawrence was the goalkeeper, Lowell, Smith at fullback, Yates, Byrne, Callahan, Thompson, Stevenson, Strong, St. John, and Roger Hunt. Our team, by now you can all recite it: Marshall, Craig, Clark, Montgomery, McGrath, Ailey, Robson, Napier, Bennett, Thompson, and Hilly. We're Harvey's, as I said before, Harvey very loyal to the lads that play for him. No question about that. And anyway, they rolled their sleeves up and gave Liverpool a good game. We got a 0-0. So a point was better than nought, should we say. At least it lifted us out of the second bottom place. And we then had an away game to Villa, and we hoped we might get something at Villa, but we didn't. We lost 4-2. Bennett scored 2 goals, but Villa with McLeod, Wozenham 2, and Hamilton scored 4 goals with 20,000 in the ground. Our team was the one that I've just read out so many times. And the Villa team, exactly the Villa team that played at St James's Park, with McLeod and Hamilton, Wozenham and Schluan at fullback, all doing their bit to make sure that Villa won and sent us back down into the second bottom. The next one's an away game to the Mackems. There should be a Mackems programme next.
No, the next one I have is Tottenham.
All right. Oh, well, the next game happens to be at away game to Sunderland, and with 55,000 in Roker Park, and we lost 2-0. Hurd and O'Hare scored the goals. And I remember being at that one, and my father and I just sitting on the bus on the way home, because it was a Sunderland bus, supporters bus one, taking me back to Jarrah, and having to take all the brickbats because they knew we were Newcastle supporters. We were never in the game. We lost 2-0, but it could have been a lot more. The Sunderland team just took a lend of us, really, and could have made us pay a lot more as well. However, the worst thing about that is because it's now put us back in the bottom two, and we're really looking over our shoulders now. So the next game is a home game to West Ham United, and having had the misfortune to lose at West Ham, nobody thought we were going to do anything with this one either. But lo and behold, typical Newcastle, just to book things up, they beat West Ham 2-1, 32,000 at the game, and Bennett and Suddick scored the goals, and Johnny Burns got West Ham's consolation right at the death, right on 90 minutes. So at least this lifts we're out of the bottom two, and starting to, fingers crossed, go in the right direction, and keep saying. The next one is Tottenham Hotspur away, which is the programme you've got, Steve. And it being London, we really didn't expect anything from this, but that's Newcastle United for you. A 2-2 draw. And from all the reports I've read and all the commentary I've had from people I know that were there, it's a game we could have won. We could have won. We were 2-0 down at half-time to Knowles and Weller. And then just after half-time, Albert Bennett scored a goal. And then midway through the second half, Alan Suddick scored another one. And by then, Spurs were on the heels. But unfortunately, we couldn't get the winner. But even more fortunately, neither could they. 26,600 at White Hart Lane in what was a very, very decent game. We breathing a sigh of relief. That's another point to lift us away from the bottom two, and we come home to an FA Cup third round. Spurs team, incidentally. Cyril Knowles at fullback, who's came from Middlesbrough. Dave Mackay, who became Derby manager. Laurie Brown was the centre half. Now, Laurie Brown was from Bishop Auckland, played for Bishop Auckland. When Laurie Brown signed professional, it was Arsenal that wanted to buy him, wanted to take him, but he couldn't sign. The terms that Arsenal offered him were worse than what he was making playing for Bishop Auckland, an amateur team. By the way, Laurie Brown was getting more of Bishop Auckland than Arsenal could pay him, and so he hung around until the money was right, and Spurs made the money right, and so he went to Spurs. Great centre half, Alan Mullery, who's great, well known on TV commentary. Alan Gilzine, of course, who's a well-known pundit, and the inevitable Jimmy Greaves, of course, was in the team then as well. So we come home from Spurs to a FA Cup third round against Chester City. I think there might be a Chester City. That programme might be there, Steve. Yes. Sorry, it's an away to Chester City. Well, having seen what happened in the League Cup against the 4th Division team, we're now got a 3rd Division team and wondering if we're going to survive this. Will we make progress? Well, they do. They beat Chester 3-1. With white fingers, though, mind, because in 9 minutes we were a goal down and everybody's expecting, oh, God, here we go again. But we lose before a 19,000 crowd. And Robson, McGarry and Craig score the goals. And we beat them 3-1. So everybody's thinking, oh well, this is it, the cup match. We're really on our way. Good start to the FA Cup. Let's have a run. So the next match we come to is an away game at Nottingham Forest. I think there should be that's it. And we go there thinking, well, they're not much better than us. They're just hovering around the relegation zone as well. And lo and behold, we beat them 2-1. Suddick and Hilly score the goals. Nottingham Forest were in the lead from 15 minutes, but by half-time we were 1-1. In the middle of the second half, Dave Hilly scored the winning goal to beat them 2-1 with 21,500 in the ground. And far as supporters at home are concerned, was fantastic, because this is now, we're definitely now clear of the bottom two. We're starting to look up towards the middle of the league and not the bottom. So we're thinking, well, this is pretty good. We're going to have a run, hopefully, fingers crossed, to get away from this relegation thing. So the next game is a home game to Sheffield Wednesday, and I think there might be a programme there for Sheffield Wednesday. Yep. And we hoping to get a victory out of this, because Sheffield Wednesday aren't much better than us. Well, we do. We beat them 2-0, 32,000 at the game. And Suddick scores both the goals, one in the first half and one just before the end. And so we now got 2 wins on the trot, which makes the league table look even more helpful, more hopeful, I should say, rather than helpful, but helpful as well. And thanks to Sheffield Wednesday, those 2 points were very precious. And lo and behold, within a week, we'll play them again. FA Cup 4th round. So I think there's another Sheffield Wednesday programme there, I think. Yep. And FA Cup 4th round, and everybody thinks, well, we've got rid of Chester and we beat them in the league last week. Come on, let's go for it. We're going to have a cup run. Well, sorry, lads, we're not going to have a cup run. And Sheffield Wednesday beat with 2-1 with 39,000 at the game, because it was in the DNA of the Geordies that we're going to have a cup run because we won the 3rd round. Well, Sheffield Wednesday put pay to that, and we were beaten 2-1 and dumped out of the FA Cup. Very, very disappointing. Suddick scored for us, and Dobson scored for them, and John McGrath, an own goal, scored for them. We were 2-0 down by half time and never looked like recovering. Well, the usual story of people in the galley, oh, well, that means we can concentrate on the league. Well, that's not what they really meant. They were as disappointed as hell that we didn't get a run in the cup. But concentrate on the league we did. And 2 Sheffield Wednesday games on the trot. Our team, you could name it yourselves, because from now on to nearly the end of the season, it hardly changes. With Marshall, Craig, Clark, Anderson, McGrath, etc. Harvey's loyal servants get into the team. Except I mentioned Anderson. Well, Anderson didn't get into the team because Harvey just sold him to Middlesbrough to become their player manager. And everybody thought, what the hell is he doing? What on earth is he doing? He's so to a captain and one of our best defending midfielders and right at the time when we need him. And so Harvey publicly said he was, to placate the fans, he was going to buy a very decent replacement. And he bought Keith Kettleborough from Sheffield United. Well, most of the people in the Gallagher corner, I can tell you, were saying, Keith who? Keith who? In space of Stan Anderson. Well, Keith Kettleborough had torn us apart when we'd gone to play at Sheffield. And I don't think Harvey'd forgotten. And so he bought him it was an inspired by, because he was fantastic. He was fantastic, and he steeled the rest of the team to get hold of this the relegation thing and do something about getting out of it. So we're now away to Northampton, and people are hoping, well, perhaps we might get something there, but we lose 3-1. Absolute disaster. 14,500 at the game. They score three goals before half time. We're just not in it, and just before the end, Jamaili scores a consolation. So we're now rattling back down to the wrong end again, and people getting a cold sweat on about where we're going to be. So we come home to a home game against Stoke City, and Stoke by now are swapping places with us within the bottom four. I mean, Stoke, us, Northampton, and I think Blackburn were sitting on the bottom at the time. And so we come home to a Stoke City game, and Stoke have the same team we'd played them before, with McElroy, Setters, Violet and Vernon in the team, and they give us a real 1,000 at Stoke, and everybody's biting their fingernails here. Well, they need to bite their fingernails, because we beat them 3-1, 2-0 at half time with Hilly, Suddock 2, and they get a consolation on about the hour from Burrows with 27,000 in the game, in the ground, and well, everybody's just heaving a huge sigh of relief, because it's a 4-pointer. What they would call the current days a 6-pointer, because there was only 2 points the game then, so Stoke City do the favour of a victory that pulls them out of the bottom two, and sets them up nicely for a home game against Sunderland. Now, I don't know if there's a programme there for Sunderland. Yes, there is. I thought there was. I certainly got it ticked as having one. So we 53,000 at the game. And I've got to say, as raucous a crowd as you'll ever hear, it was fantastic. The importance, because Sunderland weren't that high up the league, the importance of this game wasn't just derby credentials. It was about helping us to get higher up the league and towards a safe position in the league. And they didn't let us down. We beat Sunderland 2-0. Alan Suddock was unplayable on one of the games where he just did everything right. He scored 2 goals, one in the first half, one in the second half, and we beat them 2-0. And that's that's David Craig, and I think that's out of place. It's that's a Chelsea game, I think, later on. But never mind, we beat the Mackhams well and truly, and that's as I say, the uplift in the Gallagher corner and the rest of the crowd was incredible. The Mackhams team was Montgomery, Park, Ashurst, Harvey Hurley, Charlie Hurley, Jimmy Baxter, Hurd, Elliott, O'Hare, Moore, and Mulhall. And of course, Elliott became a Geordie player a couple of weeks after that. Joe Harvey bought him and brought him to Newcastle. Thanks to Sunderland, we're now out of the bottom two and making progress. We're away at Burnley next. Now, 16,000 crowd. Whether the comments of Bob Lord saying that we were rough and tough and all the rest of it had anything to do with it, well, it was one of those games which was interrupted by fouls every 5 minutes. Both teams going in hammering tongs. So if we were rough, then Burnley were rough, that's for sure. They beat us 1-0. Willie Morgan, the right winger, scored a goal. And he was very talented winger. As I say, it was a game which was just totally spoiled by constant fouls. However, it wasn't a hammering, which seemed important at the time. So we came home to a home game against Chelsea. Now, I think there's a couple of Chelsea pictures there. Yes, it's Chelsea. Sorry, I got that wrong. It's Chelsea. And there should be another one, I think, Steve.
That's the only one.
The only one.
Got, yeah.
Right, okay. And we were sweating in the Galgate corner because Chelsea was such a good team. They beat us 1-0. Terry Venables scored the goal, 35,100 at the game. And we were sweating again about diving down to the wrong end of the table. And it didn't help with the fact that we knew that the next game was Arsenal away. So we, with trepidation, the team went to London again to play Arsenal. I think there should be an Arsenal programme there, Steve. And the team, yeah. That's it, yeah. And it became, that game, I think, turned to a season around. That's the Arsenal squad. What a huge squad. And what a lot of characters in it as well. We beat them 3-1. Unbelievable. Alan Suddick scored. Pop Robson scored 2 goals. And just before the end, Peter Noble scored an own goal for Arsenal. And it was just unbelievable. It was in London against top team. And there we were winning 3-1, which, really eased the fears of relegation on Tyneside, with 33,000 at the game. And we came home with a home game of Everton to face, and they weren't that much better than us, so we thought we might get something out of that. And lo and behold, they did. They drew 0-0, rolled their sleeves up and really give Everton a game. It was I always remember being at the game. It was another one of these 0-0s that was quite entertaining. With 30,700 at the game, and we put another point. So that's like 3 points collected in 2 games, and that makes such a difference in the league when there's only 2 points a win. So we're now looking forward to a home game against Blackburn Rovers, and we hopeful that, because they're not much better than us, in fact they're definitely below us in the league thus far, and we beat Blackburn as well, 2-1. Robson and Hilly scored. Darlin scores for them just before the end, 22,000 at the game. And Blackburn's team was the team that we played earlier at their place, with Ronnie Clayton and McAvoy and Darlin and England and Wilson and all the characters playing, and we thought, well, this is great. We've got another victory, so we're heading in the right direction. And the next game is an away game, and because this is over the Easter, we go to Everton. First game at home with Everton, next game away at Everton, and we go to Everton. Unfortunately, we lose 1-0 to a Jimmy Gabriel goal with 33,000 at the game. And we're still looking over our shoulders, because the difference between bottom of the league and middle of the league is only a handful of points. About 6 points, I think, covers the bottom 7 or 8. And we're right in the middle of that. So any defeat, and this was one, is going to cause anxiety. So Everton beat us with the same team as that had out before, except they had two different players in a front five. A lad called Jimmy Husband, who played for Newcastle Boys and ended up going to Everton, missed Newcastle United out. And then they had a lad inside at midfield called Treblecock. We used to call him up here. Treblo, I think is how we pronounce it, who they've got from Plymouth. And he became famous by scoring 2 goals that won them the cup final. I think the year after this. So there was the Everton game, which we lost 1-0 to Jimmy Gabriel, as I said. So the next game was an away game at Leicester. Now Leicester had absolutely marmalised us at home, so people went to thought about this game with a great deal of anxiety. But lo and behold, trust the lads to do the opposite, roll their sleeves up, and despite going down in the first 5 minutes, Bennett and Robson scored 2 goals in the 50th and 57th minute, and we come home from Leicester with a 2-1 win. And already here, the sighs of relief right across the Tyneside, thinking, well, this is it. We're on the right road. We're certainly out of the bottom 2. And we come home. We come next to an away game at Blackpool, and nobody's expecting to get anything out of Blackpool, with the likes of Ball and Charnley and Armfield, all their star players in the team. But again, the team rolls up its sleeves and gets a 1-1 draw. The difference in our team at the moment is only one player, and it's Keith Kettleborough, the lad that Harvey brought from Sheffield United. No, as I say, when they bought him, everybody in the Gallagher corner said, Keith who? Well, by now they were saying, Keith him. Yeah, because he really did uplift the team. It means now one player can make such a difference. But he was such a clever player, and he did. He made that difference. So we got a draw at Blackpool 1-1. Alan Suddock scored the goal. So we came home to a home game against Sheffield United, and we really hoped that we'd get another victory to make it certain that we'd stay in the division, but we didn't. We lost 2-0 to Jones, the lad that got from Leeds United centre forward, got 2 goals, and we lost 25,700 at the game. And to say that sent a tremor down the spines of people in the Gallagher corner is putting it mildly. Again, looking over our shoulders, wondering what the devil's going to happen. So the next game, and we're not looking at anything from this game, Leeds United away. And I think there's a programme there for Leeds United.
No, the last one you gave us was Blackpool, mate. That's
fine. That's fine. Okay, Leeds United. And we're hoping at least we'd get a draw. Can we get a draw out of this Leeds United game? Well, we can't. We get beat 3-0. Story, Lorimer, and McGrath on goal were the scorers. 30,000 at Elland Road. And our team, Marshall, Craig, Clark, Kettleborough, McGrath, Eiley, Robson, Thompson, Penman, Hilly, and Suddock. And it'd been that team nearly throughout. It was just odd changes because of injury. And as I say, with odd changes, like putting Billy Thompson the centre-half at centre-forward when we couldn't find a centre-forward. 8 people played centre-forward in this season. 8 people, different people played centre-forward. We lost, as I say, 3-0 at Leeds, to come home to a home game against Fulham, with our fingers crossed, our toes crossed, and everything else crossed, because these next 2 home games could be absolutely vital to where we're going to be in the following season. And the lads got a draw, 1-1 draw against Fulham, with John McGrath scoring our goal, and the infamous Bobby Robson scoring Fulham's equaliser, but by now only 19,000 at the game. So I think that tells you that how worried Tyneside is about where we are. And then the last game of the season is another home game against Leeds United. And this is the Easter game. 1 away, that's Leeds away. 1 at home, Leeds at home. This is the FA thinking of the day. Anyway, we got Leeds at home, and having got a hiding off from 3-0 away just a couple of weeks beforehand, Everybody's thinking, well, this is going to be a disaster. Well, it wasn't. They rolled their sleeves up and they won 2-0, beat Leeds 2-0. And Pop Robson and Alan Suddick scored the goals with 24,000 in the ground. And those last two victories kept us in the division. I mean, we would have been struggling without that. I mean, we finished. It looks good to say that we finished 15th, but 15th was only 4 points above 21st, which was relegation. So those two games I've just talked about, I mean, really were vital. However, the lads rolled their sleeves up and got a result. In that season, our goals against was the best in the first division, apart from the champions, who scored Liverpool, who let in one less, 34. We only let in 35. But our goals for was only 50 in a whole season. The worst goals for we'd had in 50 years. So we were hanging by our fingernails in those last two games. Really did cement things. And as I started by saying that things went off the field as well as on the field, well, they continued. The row about the ground continued. And it was the Newcastle directors that really wound it up by buying 35 acres of ground on Sandy Lane in Gosforth, right next door to Gosforth Park, and submitting outline plans for a brand new stadium. And virtually say at the council, well, you want your multi-sports stadium, well, get on with it, because we're moving, which caused absolute, you can imagine, even then, I mean, now it's causing all sorts of issues. Then it became political, never mind anything else, fans lobbying to not vote Labour at the next council elections and all the rest of it. But that was what the directors did. They bought this land, 35 acres up at Sandy Lane, right next to Gosforth Park, for a purpose-built ground. What I need to tell you is, though, is that 35 acres was never sold until Freddie Shepherd took over the club. And Freddie Shepherd sold it as part of redeveloping St James's Park. So there you are.
Fantastic, George, as always.
Just saved our bacon.
Comprehensive, as always. I just listen and get them, put the photographs up. So fantastic, George. Thank you for giving us up so much of your time today with your research as well. Brilliant show, mate. And we're into Steve Wilkinson territory. So maybe for the next show, we might get Steve Wilkinson on as well for a little bit of insight as a fan, because he was at the games as well. So we might get him on at the end for a little, just a little appraisal. It'd be nice to have him on.
Good idea.
Great stuff, George. I look forward to the next
Steve.
one. Take care, mate.
It's already ready.
I knew it would be. Here's the ad. We're going to play out with the ads. Take care, folks.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Steve.
Big thank you to skipsandbins.com, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract, free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals, independent funeral directors. You can find them at 304 Old Durham Road, Gateshead. Telephone 0191 478 273 or email Darren at darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk or go to the website darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. You can find them at thegohd.com. And thanks to 3 Property, who specialise in sourcing investment properties for their clients who are looking to invest in the Northeast. They offer a full in-house service from sourcing the deals to managing the properties for you. They've done over 100 plus deals in the past 12 months for clients all over the UK. Give the guys a follow on Instagram, matty.patter_northeast property and phil.reed_northeast property, or email phil@3property.co.uk if you're interested in getting a good property deal. Thanks also to Mr. Vicky's Sauces. They are handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickys.co.uk or give them a call on 01768 210 102. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video technology side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wolves and Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the NUFC Matters logo in the bottom right-hand corner and you can subscribe for free. Hit the thumb up underneath the video to like it. It does us a big favour. And click share to share to your social media, such as Facebook and Twitter. Maybe it's added to a Newcastle United group. You can also make a donation. Just hit the thanks button underneath if you're enjoying the content and you want to share something with me or the people on the channel. And you can also click join, which means that you commit to maybe a monthly membership, or you can become a cult member. How do you do that? Well, you go to the website, NUFCmatters.com, and you search for membership. What do you get for your £25 one-off payment? You get a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, and entry into the monthly draw. We also have a smart code. There you go, the QR code there. If you put your smartphone over it, it'll take you straight to the website and you can get involved in a cult membership pack today. We also give you something for nothing. If you subscribe to the show, then email john@nufcmatters.com and get your free car window sticker now. We also support the food bank on here. NUFC fans foodbank.co.uk is the Matchday Bucket website. You just need to go there and you can make a virtual donation. Don't forget, during the season on match days, we're at the Dog and Parrot with Supermac, pre-match and post-match. And we're at Pumphrey's, John Anderson and John Gibson, pre-match only. Also got the Takeover anniversary party coming up at the Irish Centre. Tickets are £2 on the door, and you can get your tickets for that from NUFCmatters.com. And Supermac will be at the Terrace Club in Seaton Delaval, Friday the 11th of November. Tickets are a tenner, table is £650, and you can get those tickets from 0191 237 0133.